I suppose I have to start calling him my ex-best friend, though just thinking about it feels like a knife twisting in my chest. It's not easy to accept that a friendship we spent nearly half our lives building has disintegrated overnight. For 18 years, I believed we were inseparable, two halves of the same coin. He wasn't just my friend. He was like a brother to me, someone I trusted with everything. To my parents, he was practically another son, and his family treated me the same way. Back in high school, we were practically inseparable, splitting our time between each other's homes. It was like we had two sets of parents, two kitchens to raid, and double the family support. Our families even vacationed together, sharing trips that became part of the patchwork of my happiest memories. Whether it was camping trips, beach outings, or just hanging out in each other's backyards, we shared moments I thought would stand the test of time. When I got married, there was no question he'd be my best man. He stood right next to me on one of the most important days of my life, and I was supposed to do the same for him. That's what best friends do. We're there for each other, no matter what. We went through everything together: breakups, job troubles, family issues. If one of us was struggling, the other was always there, ready to offer a listening ear, some much-needed advice, or just a distraction to lighten the load. He wasn't just a friend. He was my confidant, my partner in crime. Losing him feels like I've lost a limb. It's not just painful, it's disorienting. And to lose him like this, in the worst possible way, feels like a betrayal so deep I'm not sure I'll ever recover from it. Honestly, losing him hurts almost as much as losing my wife. And that's saying something. My wife and I have been married for almost 5 years, but we've been together for 7. I remember the first time I saw her like it was yesterday. She walked into the room, and it was like the world tilted. I couldn't take my eyes off her. Her piercing blue eyes seemed to see right through me, and her laugh, God, that laugh, was the kind of sound that made everyone around her feel alive. I couldn't believe it when she agreed to go out with me. I mean, she was completely out of my league, or at least that's how I saw it. But as I got to know her, I realized there was so much more to her than her beauty. She had this way of seeing the good in everyone and everything. Her passion for helping others, for making the world a little brighter, was magnetic. I couldn't help but fall for her, harder and faster than I thought possible. Marriage to her felt like winning the lottery every day. I worked hard to be the kind of husband she could be proud of. I took care of myself, stayed in shape, and made sure to celebrate the milestones and small moments that mattered to us. Anniversaries, birthdays, even just random days when I wanted to make her smile. I never let those slip by. I listened when she talked, really listened, because what she had to say mattered to me. At the same time, I made sure to give her space to be herself. I wasn't the clingy type, and I never wanted her to feel smothered. Around the house, we shared responsibilities equally. If she was folding laundry, I'd be washing dishes. If she vacuumed, I'd clean the bathrooms. We were a team in every sense of the word. Even in bed, things seemed great, or at least, I thought they were. I loved her deeply and made sure she knew it, not just with words but with actions. I kept dating her even after we got married, planning surprises, taking her out, and making her feel special. I never once took her for granted. That's why it's so hard to understand what went wrong. I've been racking my brain, replaying every moment, every conversation, trying to pinpoint where things started to fall apart. Did I do too much? Was I too available, too dependable? Did she start to see me as a pushover? Or did she lose respect for me for reasons I can't even fathom? I'm not saying we had a perfect marriage. We had our disagreements like any couple, but they were never big enough to cause cracks. At least, that's what I thought. The real shift began when my best friend went through a rough breakup. He and his girlfriend had been together for years, and when they split, it hit him like a freight train. I tried to be there for him as much as I could, talking him through it, offering advice, and just listening when he needed to vent. But then my wife suggested something that, at the time, seemed perfectly reasonable. She asked if I'd mind if she went out for coffee with him to give him a woman's perspective. She thought it might help him process things differently. I didn't see any harm in it. After all, they were friends too. We'd spent so much time as couples, my wife and I with him and his girlfriend. So it didn't seem strange that she wanted to help. I trusted her, and I trusted him. What reason would I have not to? At the time, I didn't think much of it. Their friendship seemed entirely appropriate, even natural, given how much time we all spent together. Sure, I remembered my friend complimenting my wife's looks when we first started dating and again after we got married. But it was nothing more than a casual remark, something you'd expect from a friend. There were no inappropriate comments or suggestive jokes, nothing to make me suspicious. My wife might have mentioned once or twice that he was a good-looking guy, but it didn't raise any red flags for me. Why would it? I trusted them both completely. Even now, looking back, I can't pinpoint any signs that there was something more than friendship between them. When my wife came back from that coffee meeting, though, I noticed she seemed different. It wasn't anything I could put my finger on at first, but her energy was off. She seemed unusually upset, angry, even, about his ex. She went on about how his ex didn't deserve him and how he deserved so much better. I tried to calm her down, telling her he was young and would bounce back with time, but she brushed me off, insisting that any girl who ended up with him would be incredibly lucky. She said his ex had been foolish to let him go. Her passion about the topic struck me as odd, but I chalked it up to her being protective of my friend. After all, I would have been upset too if the roles were reversed. What I didn't realize then was that this was the beginning of a shift, one I wasn't prepared for. In the days that followed, her behavior started to change. It wasn't anything obvious, at least not at first. She just became more vague about her plans. When she told me she was meeting a friend or running errands, she wouldn't offer any details. That wasn't like her, but I didn't make a big deal out of it. I've never been the kind of husband who checks up on his wife or questions her every move. She'd never given me a reason to doubt her, and I trusted her implicitly. At the same time, my best friend started acting strangely too. He was more withdrawn, harder to reach. I'd invite him over to hang out, just like we always had, but he kept turning me down. He said he was busy, but his excuses were vague and unconvincing. When we did meet up, he wasn't himself. There was a tension about him, a discomfort I couldn't quite place. I figured he was still struggling with his breakup, so I gave him space. Looking back, I feel like an idiot for not seeing what was right in front of me. Then, one day, he messaged me out of the blue, asking me to come over. He said he needed to talk, that he had some things he needed to get off his chest. I didn't think twice about it. I figured he wanted to open up about his breakup, or maybe something else that had been bothering him. When I arrived, I knocked on his door, and he answered almost immediately. His expression was serious, almost grave, which caught me off guard. I tried to lighten the mood with a joke or two, but he didn't even crack a smile. Instead, he told me to follow him into the living room. What I saw next stopped me in my tracks. My wife was sitting on his couch. She looked up at me with tear-streaked cheeks, her face a mess of guilt and sorrow. For a moment, I just stood there, frozen, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. A creeping sense of dread began to claw its way through my chest. Then he spoke. "There's no easy way to say this," he began, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "We're in love. We want to be together." His words hit me like a freight train. For a moment, I felt like I was outside my own body, watching the scene unfold from a distance. When I finally managed to gather myself, they both started talking at once, apologizing, trying to explain. They insisted it wasn't something they had planned, that it had just happened. They claimed it was an emotional connection, not a physical one. They swore up and down that nothing physical had occurred between them. Whether that was true or not, I couldn't bring myself to care. The betrayal was the same, no matter how they tried to frame it. Since that day, I've been drowning in a storm of emotions: shock, anger, disbelief, sadness. They've both been texting me nonstop, apologizing, begging for forgiveness. My wife keeps asking if I'm okay, saying she still cares about me, but I can't bring myself to respond. Her messages have become less frequent now, and I'm fine with that. She moved out of our house shortly after the confession. I didn't ask where she was going, and honestly, I didn't want to know. But it didn't take long for me to find out. A mutual friend told me she moved in with him the same day she left me. A few days after the devastating confrontation at my former friend's house, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail. Most unsolicited calls are junk anyway, but something told me to answer. On the other end was a voice I hadn't expected to hear. Emily, my ex-best friend's former girlfriend. Her tone was shaky, almost apologetic, as if she knew she was treading on delicate ground. "I hope I'm not overstepping," she said cautiously, "but I think there's something you need to know. It's about your wife and him." I froze for a moment, gripping the phone tightly. "What do you mean?" I managed to say, though my voice cracked with a mixture of dread and curiosity. "It's not something I feel comfortable discussing over the phone," she replied. "Can we meet in person? I think it's better that way." Despite the raw wound of betrayal, or maybe because of it, I found myself agreeing. We arranged to meet at a small cafe on the edge of town, a neutral place where neither of us could feel cornered. I arrived early, sipping a coffee I didn't even want as I waited. When Emily walked in, I barely recognized her. She looked as drained as I felt, dark circles under her eyes, her shoulders hunched as if she was carrying a heavy weight. After some awkward small talk and nervous glances, she got straight to the point. "I've been wrestling with whether to tell you this," she began, her voice trembling. "But after everything that's happened, I think you deserve to know the full truth." My stomach churned. "What truth?" I asked cautiously. She took a deep breath. "Your wife and my ex. Their relationship didn't just start after his breakup with me, or after that coffee meeting she had with him. It started long before that." Her words felt like a slap to the face. "What are you saying?" I asked, though part of me already feared the answer. "I didn't have proof at the time," she said, reaching into her bag and pulling out her phone. "But I found some things after we broke up. Messages, dates, things that didn't add up. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid or bitter, but now I'm certain. It's been going on for months, maybe longer." She unlocked her phone and slid it across the table. The first thing I saw was a series of old messages between her and my former friend. The dates on the messages went back nearly a year. In them, he was distant and evasive, with vague excuses about why he couldn't spend time with her or why his plans kept changing. While not damning on their own, they painted the picture of a man emotionally withdrawing from his relationship. Then she showed me the real evidence. Screenshots of messages between my wife and him. These were from months before their so-called emotional affair supposedly began. The messages were flirtatious, unmistakably crossing the line. They used pet names, shared inside jokes I'd never heard before, and even referenced sneaking around. Specific dates and times jumped out at me, matching up with the days my wife had claimed to be running errands or meeting up with friends. My heart sank. It was all there, right in front of me. The proof of their betrayal. "I didn't know how to tell you," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to seem like I was trying to stir the pot or make things worse for you. But I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. You deserve to know the truth." I sat there in stunned silence, staring at the screen. The pieces started falling into place, each one more painful than the last. The coffee meeting wasn't the beginning. It was a cover. They'd been lying to me for far longer than I ever imagined, weaving their deceit right under my nose. I finally looked up at Emily. Her eyes were filled with tears. "Thank you," I said quietly, though the words felt inadequate. I needed to know. On the drive home, I replayed every moment in my head. The late-night texts, the changes in her behavior, his sudden withdrawal. It all made sense now. How could I have been so blind? The betrayal wasn't just an emotional affair that just happened. It was premeditated, deliberate. They'd been building their relationship while tearing down the trust one thought we shared. That night, I sat alone in the darkness of my living room, unable to sleep. The weight of their deception crushed me. They hadn't just broken my heart. They'd dismantled my entire reality. And the worst part? They'd done it without a shred of remorse until they were forced to confess. Now, I wasn't just angry. I was determined. I didn't know exactly what my next steps would be, but one thing was clear. I couldn't let them get away with pretending this was an accident. That all happened just a few months ago, but it feels like a lifetime has passed. A few days ago, my wife, well, my soon-to-be ex-wife, stopped by the house to pick up some of her belongings. I'd been trying to avoid her altogether, hoping to steer clear of any awkward or painful interactions. But as I was heading to another room, she stopped me and asked if we could talk for a moment. Reluctantly, I agreed, though I braced myself for whatever was coming. She wasted no time dropping the latest bombshell. She told me, calmly and almost matter-of-factly, that she and my former best friend are trying to have a baby together. I just thought you deserved to hear it from me, she added, as if that made it any less devastating. She explained that she wanted to give me a heads up so we could navigate this as we go through our divorce. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Hearing it out loud made the situation feel so much more real, like another nail being driven into the coffin of our life together. It wasn't just the fact that she was moving on, it was how fast she was doing it. We talked about having kids together, planned for it even, but she always wanted to wait until she turned 30. That had been our plan, something we looked forward to as a team. Now, the man I used to consider my brother was going to be the one to father her children, and I'd have to stand on the sidelines and watch it happen. The thought of it twisted my stomach into knots. I don't know how to cope with the idea of her getting pregnant with his child. It feels like a constant, unavoidable reminder of everything I lost. The jealousy is unbearable at times. He's living the life I wanted, the life we had planned together. I also know this means there's no chance for reconciliation now. Not that I really thought there was much hope left. But once there's a baby involved, that's it. The finality of it all is suffocating. I briefly considered suggesting counseling to her, but I knew in my heart it would be a waste of time. She's fully committed to him now, and nothing I say will change that. Besides, I'm not even sure what I'd want to accomplish with counseling at this point. I can't make sense of what they've done to me, or how I didn't see it coming. We seemed happy, or at least I thought we were. How could she leave after everything we built together? It's making me question everything. If you can't trust the person you married, or the friend you've known for half your life, what can you trust? It feels like everything I believed in was a lie. Life is so unfair sometimes. It's a thought I can't escape, even on the better days. And surprisingly, there have been better days since she left. I'm starting to think about what the future might hold, even if the path ahead feels uncertain and daunting. In the meantime, I've also started getting serious about finding a good lawyer. I spoke to one already, but next week, I plan to dive deeper into my search. Thankfully, my friends and family have given me a few solid recommendations to consider. On the mental health front, I know I'm not in a good place right now. I've been thinking about starting counseling soon. I need professional help to work through this because, honestly, I don't know how to process it all on my own. Some of you have asked why I didn't confront my ex-best friend more directly when they confessed their affair. It's something that's been bothering me too. I realized I never really told them how deeply they hurt me. Maybe they wouldn't care, but I feel like I need to say it for myself, if nothing else. To cope, I've been making small changes around the house to make it feel more like my own space. I've cleared out some of the things that remind me of her and replaced them with items that bring me comfort. Nights are still the hardest, though. When the world goes quiet, my mind starts racing, replaying every moment and second-guessing everything. For now, I'm just trying to stay busy and keep my mind occupied. The hardest part is figuring out how to let go of the pain and the memories, but maybe that's the only way forward. In the weeks after everything unfolded, I found myself writing a letter to my ex-wife and former best friend. At first, I thought it would bring me closure to express everything they put me through. But after sitting with it for a while, I realized sending the letter wouldn't change anything. It was better to keep it for myself as a way to process my emotions and move forward. Not long after, I finally chose an attorney to represent me in the divorce. He came highly recommended, and I trusted him to protect my interests. Last week, I filed for divorce. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I knew it was necessary. Leading up to that day, I felt a small sense of relief, like taking that step might ease the weight I'd been carrying. But once the papers were officially filed, reality hit me again. I couldn't stop thinking about how things turned out this way, and the sadness crept back in. I've been trying to accept that she's not coming back. A part of me still dreams of her showing up at my door, apologizing for her mistake. But I know that's a fantasy. I can't base my life on something that will never happen. The truth is, the woman I thought I knew doesn't exist anymore. Or maybe she never did. That realization has been both freeing and devastating. For a while, I considered pursuing an alienation of affection suit against my ex-best friend. My attorney explained the challenges of winning such a case, and in the end, I decided it wasn't worth it. Even if I won, it wouldn't bring me peace or undo the damage they caused. My focus now is on wrapping this up as quickly as possible so I can start fresh. After receiving the divorce papers, my ex-wife reached out to me. She asked if we could meet and talk. I haven't responded. There's nothing she could say that would make me feel better, and I doubt her reasons for wanting to meet are anything I need to hear. I've spent enough time dissecting what happened and trying to find answers that probably don't exist. To stay occupied, I've thrown myself into hobbies I used to enjoy. I've been running more, returned to fishing, and even tried yoga. Surprisingly, yoga has helped, though meditation wasn't really my thing. Work has been a good distraction, too. I also considered learning French, but I've put that idea on hold while I focus on other things. The goal is to keep busy and avoid too much alone time with my thoughts. Recently, I came across a video that offered a perspective I hadn't considered before. The speaker said that if someone moves on quickly after a breakup, it's a sign they were never really right for you. That struck a chord with me. For so long, I thought she was the one. Now, I'm starting to realize she might not have been, because if she truly loved me, how could she do this? The video also talked about the importance of letting memories stay in the past and not letting them define your present. I'm trying to embrace that idea, though it's easier said than done. Despite everything, I'm beginning to see glimpses of a future without her. It's not an easy road, and I still have moments where the pain feels overwhelming. But I know that moving forward is the only way I'll ever find peace. For the first time, I'm starting to imagine what life might look like on the other side of all this. And while it's far from perfect, it's a step in the right direction. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel